Invasion of Our World, a Warhammer 40k fanfiction miniseries. The Battle of Paris, written by Paul Fisherman, but owned by Games Workshop. It can also be found on Facebook and YouTube under the name Fractured World History. Once the slaughter at the United Nations General Assembly was complete, a worldwide invasion of the planet began, and every nation on Earth finds itself under assault from an enemy from the stars. As the Imperium of Man purges the planet, the Earth burns. Corporal Jacques Lafleur rides aboard a fully loaded French C-17 Globemaster transport. Hundreds of these aircraft fly in close formation as they approach the French capital of Paris. The men on Jacques' plane are different because they are not members of the French military in the literal sense, but instead serve in the French Foreign Legion. These mercenaries, with the exception of officers, are foreigners. The Legion offers an opportunity for men from impoverished countries to earn great pay and serve a cause greater than themselves. The recruits shed their past life and names in exchange for a new identity, to either run away from a former life of crime or one seeking adventure. In exchange for the danger, legionaries who are wounded or killed automatically become citizens of France. Even though it's likely that France won't survive the day, many of these men will be able to have their dream come true of becoming a son of France. When the attack began, there was a surprise assault against the main legionary base on the island of Corsica. The Imperium fought with ferocity, but could not and did not expect the tenacity of the defenders. The legionaries were able to inflict heavy casualties and able to repel the attackers long enough to evacuate the base. In all, there were 6,000 remaining legionaries waiting to rejoin the rest of French forces overseas. Upon entering Paris airspace, the colonel in charge of the entire legion addresses the troops. "My brothers, this is a glorious day, a wonderful day. Every one of you has the chance today to become a son of France. Our orders are to rejoin all NATO forces in the United States of America. From there, we will continue to fight the enemy." A nearby explosion interrupts the speech momentarily as he continues. "I won't abandon our beautiful homeland. In a few moments, the doors will open for anyone who wants to join me for the final battle for France. I encourage you to choose your own path, but as long as I breathe, France will continue to endure." In silence, the men consider their options as muffled explosions of war rage below them. Suddenly, one of the pilots announces over the intercom, "Enemy fighters are approaching. Prepare for emergency deployment." The formation begins to tighten up as dozens of F-35 fifth-generation fighter escorts prepare for a dogfight. As the lights in the cargo cabin go red, the back cargo ramp noisily opens to a thunderous orchestra of engine roar and explosions. In a hurry, Jock grabs his parachute and runs towards the ramp where hundreds of others wait for the orders to jump. While standing close to the edge, he can hear the colonel laugh while remarking, "It seems that fate has decided where we shall die. Jump, my brothers, jump and join me in our destiny." Jock watches the colonel leap from the aircraft, and soon thousands of others follow him in free-falling through the sky. Jock looks up as he throws himself out the back, and he watches as the F-35 loose their missiles on the enemy fighters. A number of enemy aircraft are brought down by the advanced fifth-generation aircraft, but most of the C-17s are destroyed in seconds. Jock continues to watch the F-35s chase and be chased by the enemy until the clouds obscure his vision. While free-falling through the clouds, the legionary can notice there's a moment of tranquility. If one didn't know that a war was underway, they would never know of the genocide raging below. It is as if they are preparing to act as France's avenging angels, a final sword in the dark to provide justice for a dying people. Regardless of whether today marks the end of humanity, the Imperium will suffer a substantial loss and learn of the indomitable human spirit. Soon the burning city of Paris is now in view. It is a hot afternoon, and the ruined metropolis is clearly visible to everyone as they fall. All over the city, fires rage unrelentingly, and the explosions resound throughout as thousands of small skirmishes contribute to the overall genocide. In the background, Jock watches the once iconic Eiffel Tower now lie in a pile of twisted metal and beams. He also watches as a French bomber drops 2 1,000-pound bombs on a cluster of enemy guardsmen. He can't help but feel joy knowing that every small victory means that maybe the battle can be won. As the legionaries begin to pull their parachutes, they watch the battle unfolding beneath them. Jack pulls his ripcord and suddenly feels the jolt slow him down almost immediately. He can't help while hovering but watch in disgust as a group of guardsmen fire on hundreds of fleeing civilians in the tightly packed roads without mercy or pity. The air below is filled with the sounds of red laser bolts, screams, and strange prayers, which quickly end once the shadows of hundreds of paratroopers cover the area. The guardsmen have progressed into the city largely unopposed, albeit with the occasional police officer to slow their progress. The Emperor's servants freeze and watch the legionaries land further down the road and on top of the surrounding buildings on the narrow street. As soon as Jock and the others land, they shed their parachutes and prepare their weapons for murder. It is unclear what to do as both sides watch until the colonel orders over the radio. "These cowards aren't taking any prisoners, and neither are we. They kill unarmed men, women, and children. Let's show them what happens when they fight real soldiers. Kill them all, leave none alive." The thought of retribution thrills Jock, and he quickly aims his FAMAS rifle at a guardsman's head. When the invader drops to a single gunshot, the other guardsman stands stunned and in disbelief that such a primitive weapon could kill a faithful servant of the Emperor. Suddenly, a woman in a red tunic raises her sword and yells, "For the Emperor!" The legionaries rush forward with a cry of their own, "Vive la France!" Now there's an intense firefight down the several narrow Parisian streets. The crowded rows of parked cars serve as makeshift cover for both sides. The legionaries' 5.56 ballistic projectiles slam through fiberglass car bodies and final resting place in many enemies. Likewise, they discover the enemies use laser weapons known as las guns, which can punch through any body armor, making any obsolete. 2 guardsmen are quickly dispatched with a burst to the chest by Jock, who then spots a female invader on a rooftop across the street. She holds what appears to be a large hand grenade in her hands. Before throwing the explosive, she rigorously recites a prayer. Jock takes advantage of her hesitation and destroys her kneecap with a well-placed shot. She shrieks and tumbles off the roof, all while failing to notice that the grenade has slipped free from her grasp. A huge explosion follows, killing many guardsmen and setting off a chain reaction of vehicle detonations. The chaos kills dozens of enemies and gives the legionaries sufficient time to advance and engage the enemy up close. The guardsmen lay dazed and are shot and bayoneted with a murderous, vengeful zeal. In retaliation, Jock throws his shoulder into a man's chin once they fire a laser bolt over his head. Once they slam against a black taxi, Jack steps back and strikes the man in the jaw with the buttstock of his rifle. After a gut-wrenching sound of bone breaking, Jock drives a bayonet deep into the enemy's abdomen. The legionary pauses as the man wails and pleads for mercy in some strange language. Although they are enemies, Jock emphasizes with their suffering and violently jerks the bayonet to the side, tearing the man's guts onto the street. Hopefully they will go into shock and die quickly. In a place like this, there is no way to make it any less painful, but it is the only kind of mercy a soldier can offer another. The once beautiful French street looks almost otherworldly compared to before. The area is engulfed in a thick black smoke, lit only by gunfire and red laser bolts. Jock locates one of the shooters and drops them with a precise burst. As soon as his rifle clicks empty, he doesn't panic and skillfully drops the magazine and replaces it another to return to his violent work. He watches one of his friends fall to enemy fire and retaliates until he hears what sounds like a chainsaw revving up close by. He watches in horror as a guardsman cuts through a legionary with a handheld chainsaw-like weapon, called a chainsword, and showers any bystander, whether friend or foe, with blood. Jock attempts to shoot them, but the melee weapon cuts through his rifle with ease. After jumping back, he continues to dodge the sword as it slashes for any exposed flesh. Jock times it and finds an opening, and manages to flip the attacker onto a car. After yanking the weapon from the enemy's hands, he strikes them multiple times in the chest, carving it open and causing the enemy great pain. Despite the carnage drenching him in blood-red rain, several enemy guardsmen charge with blood-red bayonets ready to avenge their comrade. Jock roars with excitement and rushes forward to meet them. From here, a decade of combat experience clashes against a lifetime of faith. The faith does little to stop the legionary's fury as he cuts down many without hesitation, and encourages the other French warriors to press on. Jock does flinch in fear as a lasgun bolt fires from behind, but he soon learns that many legionaries have begun using enemy weapons. He watches as the woman in red leading the charge shrieks the orders to counterattack. Jock ducks and grabs a discarded enemy lasgun. He is hesitant to kill another woman until she executes one of his friends. The next lasgun bolt completely removes her head in one shot. Now seeing their leader cut down breaks the guardsmen' morale and causes them to flee in terror. While they run, many guardsmen are sent to their god emperor by the legionaries as retribution for their evil deeds. Once the street is secured, the men begin to treat any injured civilians and friends. But any injured guardsmen found are given the gift of martyrdom rather than medical treatment. During the respite, an object leaps from a passing Imperial aircraft while the soldiers regroup, unaware. This manifestation crushes a legionary once it lands on the ground. From there, the new arrival begins vaporizing dozens of civilians and legionaries with a heavy bolter rifle. Soon a civilian screams in horror, "Space Marine, run!" The single Astartes rapidly takes dominion of the road and drives the recent conquerors back in retreat. To their dismay, both the lasguns and FAMAS rifles fail to do any meaningful damage. One by one, the legionaries fall, until one brave man fires a javelin rocket launcher at the superhuman monster. Once the smoke clears, it's revealed that the warrior has lost a hand, but it's far from defeated. Now driven into a blood rage, the Space Marine charges at them with the speed of an Olympic runner and begins tearing them apart with his bare hands. There is nothing that can stop the bloodthirsty beast until a legionary leaps from a rooftop above them. The Space Marine catches the human without looking and squeezes them like a grape. He then pulls them close so they can see each other face to face. But to his surprise, the legionary is covered in C4 high-explosive charges. After laughing, the soldier releases a button, and the following explosion destroys the other Astartes' hands and most of their helmet and face. The wounded Astartes looks down the road, where Jock aims a javelin at their face. There is a clamorous cheer as the monster dies once the rocket comes down, and now they lay still. From there, Jock gets new orders via the radio as the legionaries gather up enemy supplies. Lucky for them, the colonel still lives, and orders the soldiers to fall back to the train stations and into the catacombs. The fight for France is going underground. The end.